All right. Good afternoon, barely afternoon, everybody. Just a quick check on sharing my screen and hearing my audio. Are you able to see what I'm presenting and also hear me well? Hello?
Hello, we can hear you fine.
Okay. Thanks for the confirmation. If you can, if you could put your phone on mute, that would be great. And then if you have any questions or comments as we go, unmute your phone, and I'll be glad to answer them, answer the questions for you.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm sharing my screen now. My name is Jim Thompson. I am presenting this morning from our office, Concentric, here in Charleston, South Carolina. It's a great day. The folks on the news this morning said, oh, it's going to be not so hot today. It's only going to get up to a heat index of 100. So there you go. That gives you some insight into Charleston and its weather. If you have any information or have any questions, feel free to use that little chat bubble on your control panel. I'll stop every once in a while to give you a break so you can ask questions, comments, that sort of thing. I still have at least a person or two that needs to put their phone on mute, if possible. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and hit the next slide. So real quick, who are we, where are we, all that stuff. So our headquarters is in downtown Charleston, and we've recently opened a location in South America, in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We have staff throughout North America, South America, and Europe. We specialize in training and development, consulting, implementation. I think that's the key thing that makes us a bit different is we help our clients with implementation. We don't just tell them what they need to do. Educational products, SME placement, and affiliate representation. So just a bit about us and what it is that we do. So this is a review of the projected changes. The word projected is getting smaller and smaller because we're getting closer to a release standard. We're within about 60 days from having this thing fully approved, and my confidence right now, along with other quality practitioners, is very, very high as it pertains to the final draft being 99% of what you're going to see when you actually see the international standard published. So we're near the end of the revision cycle that's taken about 3 years. A couple of bits of logistic here real quick. Let me get the little annotator out. You'll see this little lightning bolt. We've added this lightning bolt in for the slides that we're going to kind of go through very, very quickly. If you want more in-depth details on these slides with the lightning bolts, we have the other sessions with a bit more depth on these slides that have the lightning bolt. So before I go any further, still just doing a quick quality check to make sure audio and the video or screen sharing is okay. Okay. Thanks, David B. Appreciate it. So this being a lightning bolt slide, you can see we're on Rev 5. Rev 5 will be is slated to come out in a few months. The initial release was 1987. You also have similar standards, ISO 14001 and 18001, tend to kind of be a three-pack that a lot of organizations will roll out. Quality management, environmental management, and health and safety. What's noteworthy on this slide is at the bottom you'll see it says ISO 45001. That is because the current 18001 document really isn't an international standard. It's a British standard, and the idea is, in conjunction with 9001 rolling out, we'll have also our first ISO standard for health and safety. So again, if you want to hear a little bit more about this slide, or the last three slides, you can look at last month's presentation, and I'll show you at the end how to get to all of the forms that we've recorded up to this point. But lightning bolt means go fast. So here's another illustration of more granular level of the five, the different phases of review that happens approximately every 5 years. You can see there's a massive global presence. 1.2 million companies or more are registered worldwide. That's a huge impact. This was based on a 2010 survey. We'll probably see excess of 1.2 million as we move towards the 2015 version. But here's a little table showing you the top 10 subscribers. This is just a quick slide on TC 176, which is the technical committee responsible for the 9001 family of documents and their changes. Here's a review of the development stages that the standards go through. Right now, we've gone past the draft international standard being approved. It's noteworthy that you see this November 2014 by 90%. So what that is saying is that the draft international standard was approved by almost 90%. So when you have almost a 90% rating on the DIS and then very few changes for the FDIS, statistics would be show high probability of very few changes and a successful approval at FDIS. Okay, so we're expected. The FDIS was released a couple of weeks ago, and then the top step there is the international standard publication. So this is what the FDIS looks like. Before I jump into that, there's a couple of questions here. So the first one is a question: can we list your presentation? Yes, that's fine. You can. I think you're saying, can you share it? Can you pass it along? That's fine. Yes, we'll provide you with a link to do that. And then there's another question that says listen. I'm not sure exactly what listen means, but if you can elaborate, maybe you can't hear. Audio seems to be okay. If you're having audio, you should be able to call in via internet or phone, and the phone number is listed if you go up to the little telephone deal. I'm going to carry on. If you have additional questions, Megan is on standby in her office next door, able to help you. So anyway, moving on. This is what the final draft international standard looks like. I purchased this and got a copy for myself last week. You'll see it says final draft FDIS. There's also a little box here that says voting begins July 9th, then voting ends September 9th. So at this point, it's out for ballot. It's the standard is, or the draft International Standard is out and about. It's been released. It's been published. You can buy it. The cost is $173, which I think is a little bit steep for a draft, but whatever. It's worth, to me, getting a jump start so that I can convey to my staff and to our customers what is expected. Real quick, there's a couple people, I think, chiming in saying that the phone number is not connecting. The number is 302-202-5900. Megan will send that information in the conference ID in chat out to everybody for those that can't get in. One thing that I found out that was both pretty cool and also frustrating to me was you can't print out this PDF and you can't share it with others. And you can't buy a site license. So you have to buy it individually. If you have 50 people in your organization that want a copy of this thing, you have to buy it 50 times for $173. I don't know if there's a bulk discount. I didn't see it, but that's what the ASQ page where you can buy this states. So here's how you purchase it. If you go to asq.org/qualitypress or just search for ISO/FDIS 9001-2015, you'll be able to get to this page. So I would search by this, and you can just, when you get onto the ASQ.org site, you can put your information in there. Like I said, the member cost and the list price is $173, so you don't get much of a discount. Actually, you get 0.0. It's 40 pages long. They also have the 9001 and the ISO 14001 FDIS available, and you can buy those separately as well. So there's a bunch of other information here, down here, additional information, accompanying standards, that sort of thing. So I recommend that you buy this, although I'm not real pumped about the fact that I can't print it out. But it says you cannot print this out. So, they disclose that you cannot print this out, and I bought it anyway, which means that I'll probably have a PDF electronic copy, and then I'll buy a bunch for my group here once the paper copy comes out. I am going to pause for a second, and I am going to see if there are any questions. If you have some questions and you want to put them in the chat, that'd be good. Any questions before I move forward? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and press on. If you have questions, shout them out in the chat, and I will. It's probably better to do it by chat this round because we have so many people on the call that it would be hard to manage all that audio. So if you have a question, I'll keep my chat box open here off to the side. You can't see it, but I can. But go ahead and ask questions that way. And then I'll open it up at the end. So stages of the standard development. We've gone through about 3 years of these different milestones for the various stages, from the new draft to the committee stage to the DIS. Now we're at the FDIS stage, or the final draft international standard. So you can see the publication date here, September 2015, and that's coming directly from ISO.org. You can see a little link here. Again, if you go to ISO.org and just search for ISO 9001 revision, or go to our website at acommoncenter.com. All of these links will be on there, and all these links are active for the presentation that we'll post online after this. So in addition to the first wave, which is 9001 coming out, you're going to see a lot of special interest in sector documents that are built on top of 9001, and those are going to be going through a change shortly after this standard is officially released. So you've got, a heavy influence in auto, aerospace, medical, teleconference. There's a lot more, or telecommunications. There's a lot more standards out there that are sector specific that are built on 9001, but this is just a handful here as examples. This is a slide that we added in after several questions about the automotive sector and ISO/TS 16949. The folks in the automotive sector were kind of late adopters of the standard. There was some talk about succeeding from 9001 and developing an automotive-specific standard that didn't have 9001 requirements inside the box. That's since been at least put on hold for now, and the idea is to build the 16949 automotive standard on top of 9001. So there's more communication and more detail. You can go to their website, ietfglobaloversight.org, and you see a link there. There's a menu item on the left, and it is called interpretations. There's one for where is it? Certification body communication here. So if you're in automotive and you want to stay tuned to the latest and greatest, you can see that stuff here. Here's working group news for revisions to 16949. Okay. On a similar note, you get aerospace and their specific sector updates through www.sae.org. There's a specific link here. You can see the presentation in the back. It came out this month. It's 9100 series. So there's a pretty cool PowerPoint, actually. Let me see if I could flip over here to it. So it's online, it's free. You can see my screen here by Alan Daniels, and it's giving the aerospace community an update, latest and greatest update on the revisions of AS 9100 and other accompanying documents. So you can see here, really one of the first things that I thought was interesting is instead of AS 9100C or AS 9100D, there's a reference to AS 9100 2016. And then the presentation also announces that that standard is expected to come out in April 2016. I haven't read anything. There's probably something out there, but I'm not sure of it yet on when aerospace is expected, automotive TS 16949 is expected to come out, but here you have it for April 2016 for aerospace. And then that change would also pertain to these other accompanying documents from the 9000 or the 9100 family. So I recommend you go online and look at that presentation linked here or presentation here in the background. And there are other key dates and details if you get the ASQ publication Quality Digest on page 54 of this month's issue. There are some other key dates and details that might be beneficial if you're working in that aerospace sector. Most of our customers are automotive automotive and aerospace, so that's why we try to pay a bit of attention and add a couple slides in here specific to those sectors. Here's another quick lightning bolt deal. So Annex SL, this is really the document that is the standard for management system standards. In short, these are the 10 sections that are going to be required in the new layout for any management system standard. So instead of clause 1 through 8, you'll have 1 through 10 now. I'll get into that here in just a second. Here's an example where your OHS, your EMS, and your QMS standards will all be published under this structure. So you'll have a common structure which will make it easier for you to manage documented procedures or instructions or really just processes in general across your organization, because of the 3 standards will be better aligned. So something that we do on a regular basis is we work with companies to have one central management system as opposed to 3 or 4 or 5 different management systems, hence the name Concentric Management System. So this change is pretty huge for us, and it's going to help with that integrated management system approach that we're seeing more and more companies go to. I'm going to hit this slide, then I'll break for a couple of questions that have come through. So what is the expectation for transition? Right now, what we recommend is that you work directly with your current registrar and your customers. Ask them. The Technical Committee 176 can say, hey guys, you have 3 years to migrate over from the 2008 to the 2015 version, but your customer can come along and say, that's not acceptable. We want you to be transitioned over in 2 years or something like that. So this is a good opportunity to start the dialogue with your registrar and your customers to make sure that your transition period is understood and they're not accelerating that transition timeline. What's expected as a general rule is a 3-year timeline to transition. So 2018 September, you should be migrated over to the 2015 version. We recommend that you avoid transitioning in, say, Q4 of 2008. You're going to miss the opportunity without losing some sort of lapse in or having some sort of lapse in your certification. So start now, at least planning if you haven't done so already, and start the transition now. Don't wait until 2018. In 2003, I experienced a massive traffic jam, and it was an absolute nightmare, where there were companies that were waiting until that last 6 months. A lot of us procrastinate, kind of like taxes and life insurance. But what happened was there was not enough auditors to go around in order to transition from QS 9000 over to TS 16949. So a lot of suppliers had to go back to their customer base and say, hey guys, we're going to have a lapse in our certification. Can we still ship your products or provide services to you? And you don't want to be in that boat. That's no fun. So avoid the bottlenecks by avoiding your transition audit the second half of 2018. You just don't want to be there. And most, or a lot, I won't say most, but too many companies will wait until that last minute, unfortunately. Okay. So I am going to answer a question here. One of the questions is addendums included in the FDIS. are the addendums, meaning I think that question is asking Annex A, Annex B, Annex C, which are at the back of the standard, and the answer is yes, those are included. Let me flip over here real quick. We'll flip to my desktop and come over to the standard. I'm not going to let you see too much here because I don't want to get slapped with giving you stuff that you didn't pay for. But you can see here at the back of the standard, starting on page 20, you have Annex A, you have Annex, where are you? Annex B, informative, and Annex, and let's see, that's it. So those are the Annex that have been added to the back, and funny thing, I don't see an Annex C. So there was an Annex C before. I'll have to do a little bit of research as to where that went. They may have dropped it, but I've got a couple of slides to show you what that used to be, and then I'll go back for next month's presentation and address, hey, where did Annex C go? So any other questions? Okay, so this next part's going to be really some of the meat and potatoes that you're probably most interested in. That's highlights. So, what makes this a significant change? Because the changes are significant. I mean, this will be the biggest change since the initial release, so 35 years. And then you also have 15 years worth of changes that quality practitioners throughout different countries have been interested maybe in adding to the standard or modifications to the standard. And it's almost like pinching a water hose for 15 years. You have quite a few significant changes that are coming out. The most one of the biggest changes, and really the most significant at a micro level, at least to me, is that you have this new structuring. You've got a layout of 10 clauses versus 8 clauses. Now you've got these three scope, normative, reference, and terms and conditions that are very similar to what you'll have in the current standard. And then your meat and potatoes are right here. So these are kind of your 7 clauses that represent the requirements and the you shall statements. Here's Annex A, B, and C. A was for clarification, B was QMS principles, and then C was the QMS family of standards. I need to do a little bit more research on whether or not it's A and B now or A, B, C. But like I said, I'll have that as an update for the August webinar. But the high-end structure, the framework, is obviously a significant change, especially if you're an organization that's based your documentation and numbering off of the previous version of these standards. Another significant change here is that the term product and service is being used as opposed to just the word product. There was some consideration in the last version of the draft that, hey, let's use goods and services or goods and service. That is now back to product and service. So the intent of the International Organization for Standardization is to sell products. Okay, they're selling standards. That's how they make their money. Like any other organization, they want to make more money. So one of the things that they've done is they've had to take a least common denominator approach in this standard so that they can sell the 9001 bundle of documents to the most organizations and people possible. Well, if you're looking just at product organizations, even if product means product and services, it doesn't translate well. So the idea is we want to capture more business and have more organizations adopt 9001. So let's add service. So, hey, that's fine. They're in the business of making money. Whatever, that works for me. Add service. We're a service organization as well. So, perhaps it will translate better. Some of the requirements will translate better through the use of the words or the phrase product and service. There's this other outstanding terminology. There's a couple things where they're English words, but they just haven't quite been used in this type of way before. Context of the organization is one of them. So the idea here, very similar to what you see now in section or clause 4.1, but just in a lot more detail. The idea is from the very beginning of the standard, define who you are. What are all your processes? What are internal processes? What processes do you rely on externally? This term, interested parties, who is that? Competitors could be interested parties. The neighbors that live across from your facility could be interested parties. Contractors, interns, your landscaping crew, whatever it might be, you need to define who an interested party is, what processes are within the context of your organization, and kind of where the fence line begins and ends. So that's something that's really an expansion of 4.1, and is meant to clarify in a bit more detail of who you are as a organization. There's this really some ambiguity when it comes down to opening up the applicability of the standard to a more common denominator. So there's obviously the word requirement, and then there's this word called relevant. So relevant, as needed, and evaluate need. These are some words that are in there that are going to be really a little bit more difficult to kind of put your finger on exactly what it is that you're supposed to be doing with respect to requirements versus suggestions and recommendations. So let's look first at this word relevant. You'll see relevant quite a bit, and relevant is really kind of addressing two things. Which interested parties, so which interested parties are relevant to you and your QMS? And then out of those parties that are relevant, which requirements from the standard are relevant? Okay, that's going to be a little bit tricky. That's I think a reason why maybe the automotive sector got a little bit bent out of shape, because the standard, from some folks I've talked to in those circles, has gotten too relaxed. So there's this balance between, hey, let's come up with a very clear requirement versus using words like as needed, evaluate the need, and that sort of thing. So as an overarching theme of the new standard, you are going to see these words that cause a bit of ambiguity. So my recommendation is start to think about, who are your interested parties, what requirements are relevant, what requirements are relevant and applicable to your supply chain in order to provide you with good products and services. So those are some very high-level word changes that you need to be focused on. So requirement is more open to interpretation based on the organization's determination of relevance or a specific requirement by a customer or sector. So, in my opinion, this ambiguity is good for the publication of sector-specific standards, because that is where the sector-specific standards can really tighten up the language and define what is relevant, what are requirements versus suggestions, so on and so forth. I have a question here. Why didn't they use the term stakeholder instead of interested parties like the Baldrige Award? I don't know. My best guess to that is because the Baldrige Award is a U.S.-based award, and the 9001 standard is seeking input from 50-some countries globally. So that's probably why the word interested parties may have been translated in a more uniform way, more of an international understanding. So that would be my best guess, although I can't say 100% sure that that's why. But I'd put my money on that answer. Good question. So this is interesting. Consider versus take into account versus shall consider. So if I'm being audited and I don't do something, I could say, well, I considered it. Okay. And that means it was optional, and I decided in my consideration I didn't have to meet that requirement. Or take into account. That's, I took that into account, and changing from supplier A to B doesn't present me with any risk that I'm not willing to take. Okay, shall consider. So how do you? This is weird. It's like a very firm word and then a very wishy-washy word. To me, this states you have to show evidence that you at least considered whether or not some requirement applied to you or not. So, again, a bit more of a ambiguity in some of the language that you see. This is an interesting point, too. Exclusions, the word exclusion is not there. So where you've seen in the past in 7.3, you can exclude 7.3. There's a statement here. It says where a requirement can be applied, it must be applied. So if there's some portion of the standard that can be applied to your organization, then that needs to be within, or at least considered to be within the confines and controls of how you define your quality management system. So back to scope. So again, there's no reference to exclusion nor confine clause 7. If a requirement can't be applied, it still must ensure conformity. So if you're saying, well, we don't do case hardening, that's something that our suppliers do, and then we receive the parts back and assemble the parts. Even though you've outsourced that, you're still responsible for the output. Okay, whatever it takes to meet the customer's expectations, be it like I said, an intern or a landscaping crew or some contracted product or service. You need to define that, and it's your responsibility to satisfy the customer with whatever agreement you come up with in terms of your products and services to the customer. This is another kind of slippery slope here. A scope can be limited to specific and identified functions or sections of an organization. So that may create a little bit of a problem if you're responsible for your supply chain and ensuring that they are third-party recognized by, a registrar or whatever. You could have, let's say, a remote location that's doing purchasing, or they're responsible for engineering or testing or something like that. And they could have a certificate hanging on their wall, but that scope might state that only the engineering services are applicable. So, the scope needs to be defined, and you need to ensure that you understand when one of your organizations that you're working with in your supply chain, when they're defining the scope and the breadth of their certification, which processes are under or within the scope of that organization, which are excluded or not counted or not applicable, and how do they ultimately define the context of their organization. Documented information versus the word procedure or record. So this is going to make it a little bit more difficult to kind of flag what processes require the output of a record versus which ones don't. So in the current standard, you can just go to the parentheses where it says C 4.2.4, and you know there's a little flag there that an auditor is going to want to see evidence of a record. Documented information is more holistic and might include work instructions, forms. It might be a record of stamping off some piece of paper. So that will be a significant change as well. Leadership versus top management. So commitment of leadership. Don't just again say that we ensure that the quality management system is being maintained and improved. The leadership group has to demonstrate its commitment, similar to what we see in 5.1 now. Management rep, it can be more than one person. The idea here is that you want your leadership group to be responsible as a whole for execution and maintenance of the system, not just one person that may work in the quality department or whatever. You want to use your QMS to drive organizational excellence, and then from product quality standards, maybe back in the early adoption of 9001, to really a newer holistic approach to using the QMS to drive value within the business. So the idea here, like a baseball, is that your 9001 or your QMS is seen almost like red stitching on a baseball. It's used to hold together and control the organization, rather than being some foreign activity that just kind of circles around and only gets brought out during audit time. Risk. This is a really big change. I would say risk is probably on the top one or two growing pains list that organizations might find themselves struggling with. Risk is the effect of uncertainty or an expected result. So risk is really placing this term preventive action, which from my experience, most organizations have failed at anyway. But let's do a bit of a dive into risk. So one of the areas you see risk being mentioned is risk-based thinking as it pertains to quality planning. So, and risk should also be coupled with opportunities. So that's why we put the SWOT analysis tool here. You're looking at risk. You're also looking at opportunities. What are some opportunities that we could potentially capture that maybe we're not? So risk-based thinking in establishing targets, goals, objectives. Risk-based thinking in terms of changes to your supply base. Some sectors have already been heavy on the risk-based thinking side. For instance, automotive, aerospace, the use of a failure mode and effects analysis tool, that forces risk-based thinking. But those organizations that have never really thought in a risk-based mindset may struggle a bit. So high probability times high severity is a big darn deal. What is acceptable and unacceptable risk? knowing that and being deliberate and planning for risk is a big aspect of the updated standard. So you need to consider risk qualitatively and quantitatively when defining the rigor and degree of formality to plan and control the QMS. So big risk equals higher controls. Some sort of failure that might occur more frequently, you need to have a higher level of control. The purpose is to be proactive, protect the customer, improve the performance of your organization, be deliberate, and be prepared should a risk surface, okay, should a failure mode surface. Here's a lightning bolt. So, you want to be able to discover problems before they get out of control, ideally. In some cases, you can't really detect a failure until that failure is surfaced, but you at least want to shorten the reaction time. I would recommend that you go back to it's either May or June video from the webinar we had. We did a very deep dive on risk and risk-based thinking during that webinar. So I'm going to kind of just breeze through these, and if you'd like more information there, then go back to either May or June, and I'll show you here in a second where those are. Here's some benchmarks for risk-based thinking. As I mentioned earlier, FMEA. That's something that organizations in kind of the more sector-specific advanced quality organizations and supply chains have been familiar with for years. Controlled, planned changes and review of consequences of unintended changes. So those are some of the key words that we're seeing in the final draft international standard for that kind of marriage between risk and changes associated, or risk associated with changes. I'm going to kind of blast through the Dilbert here. What are potential consequences, and which of those potential consequences do you react to? What potential consequences do you live with? I mean, just leaving your house and driving to work, there are inherent risks, but some of those are worth taking, and some maybe aren't. So, capabilities and constraints of internal resources. So that's a phrase where you need to take a look at what are your constraints, where do you need to rely on external resources in order to satisfy the customer. There's also this phrase called necessary knowledge. So it's not, competency and qualifications aren't the only terminology, the terms that are used, but you have necessary knowledge. So what is the knowledge that is needed to achieve conformity? What's the knowledge that you need to operate effectively? And then making sure that you allow access to that knowledge, be it instructions or training, or if you have a very special skill set within your organization, that person is able to, as a resource, be available to support the processes needed to get the product or service out the door. This is just the tip that we put in here, where the absence of a document could equal a nonconformity. This is my recommendation. You might want to consider having that as a part of your necessary knowledge base. That's something that's carried through for many years of the standard being published. But the reason why I put that is there are a lot of questions around how many documents do we need, and the answer is it depends. So I'm going to blast through Annex A, B, and C. We've talked about those briefly. Here's a quick summary slide. So according to the draft thus far, integration of multiple systems is a big deal. The new framework is, as Nigel Croft is the chair of TC 176, as he stated, the new structure provides a stable core that should be a good framework for management system development over the next 10 years. The 2015 version continues to focus on desired results and a process approach. It also takes into consideration advances in technology and quality practices that have kind of been bottled up for the past 15 years. And then it tends to speak more the language of business rather than quality ease, as we've seen with past iterations. So transitioning, you've been informed about that September 2018 expected deadline. So what's next? Where are we right now in the grand scheme of things? So currently, again, we're in the approval stage for the final draft international standard, and there's an expected publication probably that second week of September. You can buy this FDIS now, and this illustration is directly from TC 176. Some resources. So our website is at the bottom there. You can see concentric.com. We have this little tab. There's also a little footer, a header on the web page. So you can either go to here or you can go to here. And there's a ton of stuff that's been gathered by our subject matter experts that's accessible. Most of it's free. There's nothing on there that we charge for, I don't think, but you've got access to articles, key links, videos, webinar, transition tools. That's something that we'll be adding now that the FDIS is out. But it's a really neat kind of portal or quality hub for lots of beneficial information, and it doesn't cost you anything. So check that out. Click on the link, and if you're interested in signing up for email updates, you can do that as well. One other thing that we've added, we added this last month. It's actually our first lead internal auditor training for the quality management system 9001 based on the 2015 release. So I've had a couple folks say, well, how can you hold a training course before the standard is published? So what we're going to do is, we know that there are going to be very, very few changes. There's a super high probability of no significant changes, but any significant changes that there might be, or any changes at all, we'll have a supplemental remote session for any student that attends, and that won't cost you anything. But that's going to be here in Charleston, August 18th through 20th. There's a fourth day added for those folks that are interested in TS 16949 or the automotive lead auditor portion, but that would be based on the current day's standard, which is the 2009 version. If you sign up today, we'll give you, the fourth person free if you have 4 people from the organization, a $50 Amazon card, a corporate partner discount at the Charleston Harbor Resort and Marina, which is right on the water, and it's only $129 a night, and then VIP access to our resource library with a ton of different tools and templates that can help you with your transition. So if you're interested in that, message me in the chat, message Megan or Sydney, or shoot one of us an email, and we'd be glad to get back to you after this webinar. So here's how you get a hold of us. I'm Jim. I'm on the top left. Megan is next to me. Ronnie, she's up in North Carolina at the moment. And Sydney, he's a couple desks away from me at the moment. But here's how you can get a hold of us. Let me show you one other thing, which is back on the internet, and that would be acommoncenter.com. And if you go to this ISO 9001-2015 here, you will see the June webinar, you'll see the May webinar, April, March, February, and then there's a bunch of articles down here from various sources. Key links, information on upcoming forums and training. So we will continue to add material here. This presentation, as mentioned, is being recorded, so you can find that. It'll be up by probably the end of the day tomorrow on our website, that page that I just showed you. So I am going to end the recording, but I'll stick around for a few minutes if there are any additional questions. I'll actually open the I'll unmute so you're able to talk to me directly and ask questions.